scientist.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Dr. Dennis Mariano, and this is our Transformational Healing Seminar. And we're very excited this evening because we have a special guest. And our special guest is very well-renowned in the world of aromatherapy. And in today's world, the reason why we're having her as a special guest here is because there's so much out there with regard to information about aromatherapy, and not everything that they're giving us is actually true. And some of those things that people are sharing could actually harm you. So our goal is to be sure that we fill you with some information this evening from somebody who's really an expert in their field, so you can then have some principles that you can use to filter things out and think well for yourself to keep yourself safe. And that's really our purpose for this evening. And so without further ado, we're going to welcome Venessa, and she's going to talk to us about practical and safe uses for aromatherapy. That's forward right there.
All right, well, I'm Venessa. My full name is Venessa, and therefore all of my legal paperwork is labeled Venessa.
Okay.
I'm actually named after my grandmother, and it's not that original of a name because there's three of us. And you can also call me Venessa. So I've been talking to Dr. Mariano about essential oils forever, and I discovered them, 5 or 6 years ago, and he was like, this sounds great, you should sell them. I'm like, what, sell them? I don't know anything about them. So I needed to learn more, and I needed to learn more, and so eventually I learned enough that I felt like I could finally talk about them here. But I am a forever student, and I have over 850 hours of clinical aromatherapy training. I'm a graduate of the Atlantic Institute of Aromatherapy, and I'm one of 25 people who've earned the Advanced Diploma in Aromatic Medicine with Mark Webb. And I've also taken additional certifications with the Tisserand Institute, and I'm constantly updating my education and field because one of my missions is to teach and share my passion of aromatherapy with others. And by doing that, I try to make sure that I know as much up-to-date information as I can to share with others so that they can use these amazing things for themselves, because I love teaching people how to care for themselves, and that's really one way that I can combine my passion for teaching and aromatics. I'm also on the board of directors of the Alliance of International Aromatherapists, which is a professional organization, and a member of NAHA, and I am a registered aromatherapist, which is actually the only regulating body in the U.S., because aromatherapy is actually an unregulated field. So it's important to learn about essential oils and aromatics from qualified and unbiased educated practitioners.
If you can, so
closer.
You could read it through there. No, if you could read it. Yeah. If you could read that.
Oh, because you want to see my face? Okay,
Yeah,
sure. I could do that. So the closest regulating body that aromatherapy industry has to licensure is the Aromatherapy Registration Council, ARC, and it's a nonprofit organization, and they put together testing and approval, and you can pass the boards and become a registered aromatherapist. When I became a registered aromatherapist last year, I was the second one in the state of Pennsylvania, and I think now we have 4, and it's great. We're trying to encourage other aromatherapists in the state to become certified, because it'll really help to, it's really valuable to the profession for the public to have people that they know they can recognize that as educators and holistic practitioners. So what is aromatherapy? It is both an art and a science, and it utilizes concentrated plant extracts from a wide variety of aromatic plants to help support health and well-being. And the practice of aromatherapy today includes not just essential oils. Some of you may have also heard of hydrosols. That's the water, that's the co-product of steam distillation. Absolutes, CO2 extracts, resins, and fixed carrier oils are all tools that an aromatherapist would use today. Essential oils are highly volatile, concentrated, potent chemicals produced by aromatic plants, and these tiny droplets are contained in the glands, sacs, the veins of different plant parts. We find them in flowers, we find them in leaves and stems and barks, fruit, and in fruit peels like citrus, for example. And each essential oil has approximately 80 to 30 chemical constituents each, and they vary and they change from season to season. They change depending on when they're picked, where they're grown, who's taking care of them. If you pick lavender after it has rained, there won't be a lot of essential oil at all because the flower will have used it for protection and there just won't be any. Jasmine, you have to pick at night only. That's when it releases its scent. So you can imagine that you have to hire workers to pick the plant at exactly the right moment, and they only get the flowers and they only get the petals, and those are the part that you can distill. So depending on many different factors, essential oil chemistry can change. And we know a lot about essential oils. They have really amazing properties. They have antibiotic properties, antiviral, antifungal, anti-inflammatory. They can be analgesic and useful for pain, antispasmodic, anti-bruising, great for wound healing. They're regenerative for skin, and they can be great insect repellents. And we know that they can also be very balancing to our emotions. They can be calming and sedating and uplifting, energizing. We know that they have anxiolytic and antidepressant qualities. And if you do a search of PubMed or Google Scholar, you can find a number of research studies that help to demonstrate that essential oils can be helpful specifically for things like sleep, pain, mood, respiratory infections, skin issues, anxiety, digestive issues, menstrual pain. So we have a lot of data that essential oils can be really helpful. They are natural resources, and because of that, essential oils are very powerful. I had started talking a little bit, I think before we started, about how I wanted to learn more about herbs, because herbs are obviously a source of essential oils, but they are more gentle. You might think of a peppermint tea, for example, versus a drop of peppermint that might contain something like, I'm just guessing here, how much plant material would be in an essential oil drop, but you're talking lots and lots of plants versus just a little bit of some leaves in your tea, which is a normal dose. So essential oils are really potent, and that's why we need to be aware of how they're used. They are, as I had mentioned, filled with different chemicals and constituents, and because of that, it's important to know how potent they are, where they come from. One of the things that I talk about, especially about why we should really use as little oil as possible to get the desired effect, that we don't need to overuse, and we should be careful about what we purchase. I always encourage people to purchase samples from companies before you buy an oil. A lot of times you don't need a whole 5 milliliter, you may just need some drops. And on the next slide, so when you consider the amount of plant material that goes into making the oil, you might see a difference, for example, between eucalyptus, which is like 50 kilos of plant material to make 1 kilo of oil, versus rose, which you need 2 to 3 tons to make a kilo. So this helps to explain why some materials are far more expensive than others, but also goes to show you just how much plant material is used for these essential oils and how potent they are. So you don't really need to use a lot. And that's one of the things that I'm always explaining to people, that really a few drops can be all you need. And many essential oils share a lot of the same properties, so you don't need to have all of the oils. There's this impulse to buy lots of oils and lots of kits, but the truth is that you can make do with a lot of oils. In fact, you can find at least 50 uses for lavender and tea tree, and if you know, someone tells me, oh, well, I have this issue, I'll say, well, what oils do you have on hand? Because most of the time we can find oils that have many similar properties. You don't have to go out and buy lots of different oils to get the desired effect. Now, just because they're natural, you know, we talked about how potent they are. Essential oils and their constituents are often used in things like degreasing agents and cleaners. They make excellent solvents. And one of the things I like to tell people is that if you've ever used Goo Gone, or if you've ever used a product like Goo Gone, if you ever look closely at the ingredients, it is, and I think it here, it is something like 98% limonene. Well, you know what else is almost 98% limonene is orange, and almost all citrus oils have at least 80% limonene in it. So if you're not going to be putting like Goo Gone on your skin, I'm also encouraging people not to just go put, you know, like oils on their skin, right? You need to be considerate about what is in them. And so it's one of the reasons why I tell people that they should be aware that many essential oils do come with warnings. Citrus oils especially have phototoxicity issues, meaning that if you were to apply some of these citrus oils to your skin, especially lemon or bergamot, you can cause a phototoxic reaction by going out into the sun. One of my classes, I still remember this very graphic image of a woman who unknowingly had applied bergamot undiluted to her skin and then went into a tanning booth. I have no idea who or why gave this horrible advice, but the woman had like 3rd to 4th degree burns all over her body just from exposure. It's like the worst combination of things that you could do. Like, why would you ever do? But so, you know, sometimes you think, oh, they're natural and they're great, but if you think about it, you know, poison ivy is also natural, but you're not going to rub those essential oils on your skin if you're allergic. That's not going to. So there's lots of things that are natural, but you know, the dose is really, really important. And so I like to explain that some essential oils do come with contraindications, safety warnings, cautions, max dermal limits, and safety warnings for children, pregnant, breastfeeding mothers, and drug interactions. Some essential oils like wintergreen and birch, for example, are 98% methyl salicytate, which is also very common to aspirin. And so they carry a lot of the same warnings that aspirin would for really young children, and also they can interact with blood thinners. So if somebody's on warfarin or something like a blood thinner and they're using, and they may not even realize that they're using a product like that has like that cooling wintergreen effect, you could cause a person to bleed out if you didn't know and they would use it. So you know, it's important to know what you're dealing with. I had mentioned that I'm on the board at the Alliance of International Aromatherapy, and we just had our conference in Minneapolis, and it was about building bridges, and we had lots of nurses and different practitioners come in and talk about how they used essential oils in hospitals. And it was really wonderful to hear how they implement these programs in and can provide patients relief much quicker than drugs can. So sometimes they can help to fill the void between patients waiting for pain medication, for nausea, for anxiety, for congestion. Sometimes these essential oils can act really quickly, but one of the things they tell us that immediately they do, if people come in, they ask them questions, and if they have any of these things, well, they automatically they don't use essential oils. So I guess my point is that, you know, in a hospital, if they're using them, they know who to ask. But sometimes if you're getting your advice from someone who means well and wants to help, but may only have just read a book or, you know, just, you know, sort of follows whatever a company tells them to, it's important to make sure that you have your information from the right professional. So, you know, I actually have a client that I'm working with who had epilepsy as a child. And it was manageable and had gone away, and she was somebody had told her to start using rosemary in a neti pot for her sinuses, which is really bad advice anyway, because you're going to burn your sinuses, and oils and water don't mix, and you don't want to put them in your mucous membranes anyway. Bad advice overall, but it started she thinks that it may have led to adult onset seizures, and now she has epilepsy again and seizures. And one of the things that we did, we met so that I could help her with sleep, because lack of sleep leads to more seizures. And I sat down with her and we went through, which oils caused rosemary. We figured out it was likely rosemary with camphor, and so then we had to look at all the other essential oils that might have camphor, and then I looked at what medication she takes to make sure that nothing I would ever prescribe her, especially if used topically, might interact. So there were a lot of things to go through, and unfortunately she just, she didn't know. So here she may have inadvertently caused herself some unintended consequences there. So not to, but people who have other issues should always make them clear, and not just but when used responsibly, aromatherapy actually is very harmonizing and can help to promote the health of body, mind, and spirit. So I don't want to be a fear monger. I think that my goal is just to make sure people know how to use essential oils safely, regardless of what brand they use. My goal is just to make sure that people know what's available to them. So now, one of the things I like to talk about is how aromatherapy can be really easy. And in this last conference that I went to, this point was really reinforced to me when one of my absolute favorite mentors, like vintage, he's an herbalist, he's an aromatherapist, he's written my favorite books. His name is Peter Holmes, and he is renowned in the aromatherapy world. And I took a class with him, and he's showing us this woman, they're working on a sinus infection, and the client has tissues up her nose. And I'm like, oh my God, really? Just the tissues up the nose? Like here, that is the most basic of, aromatherapy applications. And someone said, well, have you ever heard of a personal inhaler? And I was amazed that he hadn't. I have some with me, and I'll show them to you. But here I'm thinking, well, clearly, you don't really need fancy things to use aromatherapy. Like, just cotton and tissues will work. So one of the things that I also learned that they do at the hospital, sometimes they don't have a lot of time. They don't have time to make individual, personal inhalers. So they'll use, I'm going to step out of view for just a second, because I brought some props, but they'll use just an empty container. Here, now, let's show you this too. All right, so now this is an example of a personal inhaler that, aromatherapy we're taught about to use, and I make these for clients, and, there's different things, and pass these around to you. But you can also use really just something basic like putting cotton in a glass jar or even an old medicine container, and just sniff it as you need to. And honestly, it'll work just as well, and it's cheap and it's easy. So I like to tell people that you can use recycled containers as really easy delivery methods and safe delivery methods. Just putting like a cotton ball. Aromatherapy jewelry. A lot of people have, especially kids, have paracord bracelets, or if you have a leather bracelet. I had a client once who the mom was trying to wean him off of ADD medication, and so needed something for school and didn't want anything that would stand out. Well, he had just gotten a leather bracelet, and so we discovered that we could put a couple drops of the blend on the bracelet, and then he could just sniff it through the day. So sometimes really easy solutions like that work. I discovered through necessity that even putting a drop, this doesn't work for guys who don't have long hair, but like scrunchie. When I took my registered aromatherapy exam, I had one blend in here. I had a blend in here, a study blend, because if you do a study blend while you're studying, you also want to sniff it while you're taking the test to help reinforce those ideas and help your brain remember, oh, I know this. But I was also nervous, so I had a different blend on here. So I'm sure the people thought I was insane, because you can't bring anything in, and they film you. I'd be like, I'm sure they thought I was crazy, but hey, it worked. It was very easy. I didn't involve anybody else's personal space. Nobody else had to smell what I was smelling. So, it was really simple, inexpensive, delivery method. So I always like to share with people that you don't have to buy a ton of equipment and you don't have to buy a ton of oils to really take advantage of some of the benefits of aromatherapy. Other really simple and inexpensive delivery methods, using water, especially for respiratory issues. If you have a cold, just warm water. It doesn't even have to be hot, just warm from the sink, and you add a drop or two of an oil that's going to help open things up. And I have some suggestions, but you might use something like eucalyptus, and you put your head over the bowl, and if you want to make it even more intense, you could put a towel over it. But that's a really easy method. You do that for 10 minutes, take some time off, do it for another 10. You don't need any fancy equipment. You can even just put a warm, if you were to put that like in say a bathroom or something, that would even help to, like, warm water and a drop of oil, that would help to diffuse things too. The cotton tissue trick, cotton balls on a tissue in a vent. Cannot tell you how many hotel rooms I've had to use this in, because my son used to play hockey, and if you've ever traveled with a hockey player and his equipment has to come back to the hotel room with you and then dry off for the next game, like, you're really going to take advantage of this cotton ball tissue, or cotton balls in all sorts of places that I leave to deodorize, lots of different methods. You can also use rock salt in a bowl or any of those jars, and you can put some drops of oil in that, and you can leave that out, and that'll actually act like an ambient diffuser for a room. You can even create like your own little inhaler by putting rock salt in one of those jars if you didn't want to use cotton, and you can add some essential oils and then keep it as your own little personal inhaler, or leave it open for ambient diffusing. So those are some really easy ways to use aromatherapy. I am going to share some tips for 5 safe and practical tips for anxiety, congestion, headaches, nausea, and insomnia. And one of the reasons that I share these especially is because they're really easy inhalation, so you don't need any fancy equipment, and it's pretty easy to get it safe. Now, a lot of these, I have this little picture here of something I like to call a master blend, but usually if I want to know if something smells good, I might mix it all together and then have a master blend and then add that. So this is an example of a master blend that I made for Think of Bath. Now, nausea is one of the things that I share that's easy for people, because it's great. It's a really great intervention, an easy intervention, and lots of different people have nausea. The number one essential oil for chemo-induced nausea is ginger root essential oil, or the CO2 extract, and then combined with mandarin or peppermint, that can be really nice. I was listening to nurses talk about how important it was to use blends for oncology patients, because you don't want the brain, I think it's called brain entrainment, you don't want the brain to associate one scent with that experience, because even though they may come out of it later when they smell that scent, they're going to be reminded of that, and it's going to be an uncomfortable memory. So so mixing different scents together. So if, for example, you were going to offer to an oncology patient, I wouldn't just use ginger. I would use ginger with something else, because you don't want them to then smell ginger for the rest of their life and then be thinking about that, because our brains do that. Similar to grief too. If you're ever giving somebody something for grief, I never just use one oil, because then that may, even if it helps them to get through, you may create that association. It's good to switch things up. So lemon, mandarin, peppermint are really nice to add for nausea blends. And again, you could just use like a drop on a cotton ball and stick it in any one of those little make-do inhalers, and that would be helpful. Same for headaches. You can use the same thing. I have not tried this yet, but the nurses at the hospital swore by black pepper and lavender together, and they said that was really great for headaches. Now, when I have clients come to me, depending on why a client has a headache and the type of headache, we would go into various types of there's different reasons why a person may have a headache, if it's a hormonal headache or a muscle headache, right? So we might treat it differently, but these are some really quick tips. Black pepper and lavender equal amounts, on a cotton ball, were really great for headaches. Roman chamomile is also really helpful for headaches and can be calming. So is spike lavender. You can also use peppermint or rosemary. Frankincense and eucalyptus are also nice. I include a little note about eucalyptus, globulus, and smithy. Actually, I don't know if I have either one on there, but if you're using it around children, you just want to be sure not to put it right in their face. There's some essential oils that are can depress their breathing, and especially for infants or young children. So I always like to, add that in there. For congestion, a sinus steam is a really great way, or just even like a tissue that you keep with you and keep sniffing, are great ways to relieve congestion. And some essential oils, a lot of the same ones, right? So again, so sometimes when I recommend things, you can see how you maybe I should just have lavender. It seems like that fits into every category here. That seems like a good one. Tea tree is a really good, great antiviral, antifungal, anti-everything, one of those. And peppermint is, especially if you don't have, if you're not breastfeeding or you don't have really young children, peppermint can also be really useful. And eucalyptus is also great for colds. I always make sure to have eucalyptus on hand, but again, you don't need a lot. A little bit goes a long way, so even just a couple drops can help. Now, anxiety is probably the most common request of help that I am asked for is anxiety and stress relief, and the best thing about that is there are so many options available for essential oils and anxiety, and these are just a couple options, and you can really personalize to what scents there are. Now, I did see some research that said that the essential oils are still useful regardless of whether the person enjoys the scent, so there's that, but it really helps compliance and use for a person and client to like the scent. And so, one of the things that I do is when I work with someone is, I try to figure out what their scent profile, what they like, and then depending on that, I can always make recommendations for anxiety based on that. If a person really likes wood scents or pine scents, or whether, they like florals or citrus, or what kind of herbs they might like. Depending on that, there's lots of options for anxiety. But some really great, commonly recommended ones, and these were also ones that a lot of the nurses in the hospital had success with. This was in their toolkit, and they would often let patients sort of pick, which ones they might like. But clary sage was very calming. Same with frankincense, lavender. Ylang ylang is a very strong floral scent, and people either love it or hate it, but it can be very calming and also very good for lowering blood pressure. There's one author, aromatherapist, who says that she did nothing for the entire month but wear ylang ylang in a necklace like this, and her suffers from higher blood pressure, and the next month her blood pressure was lower, and that the only thing that she did was just literally have it in something like this, so it wasn't even outwardly out, so ylang ylang is actually cautioned for people who might have really low blood pressure. That might be something that I might caution them, but because it really helps to relax. Bergamot is a wonderful oil for anxiety, and especially situational anxiety, like preoperative anxiety, really any kind of anxiety blend. I feel like bergamot is always lovely, but I've had a lot of success with bergamot and frankincense and lavender together for people who are having anxiety about procedures, whether it's like a dental procedure or some kind of biopsy. They can really be helpful in reducing anxiety, and sometimes you can really just, I saw somebody had the most brilliant, most basic, or they took a clip, used to hang laundry with, and they took a pom-pom and they glued it on, and then they just put an essential oil on it and they stuck it to them, and that's how they went to the pre-op. So it worked. So there's lots of ways that you can be creative. Angelica Root is also another great oil for anxiety, and neroli and rose, which are lovely and expensive, but they're also really great florals, and people really enjoy them. And some of these same oils can be helpful for sleep and relaxation, like lavender. Lavandin is a cousin to sort of its like inferior cousin. It's often looked down upon. In fact, lavender can sometimes be used to adulterate pure lavender, but in many research studies it's been proven to be more sedative than regular lavender, so it's a little bit cheaper than regular lavender too. It can be. So something to keep in mind. Sweet marjoram mixed with lavender is really great and really relaxing and great for kids too. Petit grain Bygard is actually the leaves that come from the orange blossom tree, which also gives us neroli. So it's a less expensive oil than neroli. It's made from the leaves and not the flowers, but it has a lot of the same constituents and offers a lot of the same benefits for easily half the price, maybe a third of the price. So I often recommend petit grain as a really nice substitute for neroli if it's too expensive. And citrus like mandarin are always nice. Clary sage again, frankincense, ylang ylang, and vetiver is a really nice oil for sleep and relaxation. It's a heavier rooty oil, but I like adding that to sleep blends as well. So I often talk about inhalation because it's fast and easy, and I can easily tell people how to do this at home, and I don't have to worry about you hurting yourself with oils, because it's really just one of the safest options. So I often use inhalers like these, and I sort of passed around sort of fancier version of that. I use something like an Aromastone at home, but when you don't have these methods, you can still use cotton balls, any of the do-it-yourself inhalers or sinus steam methods when these aren't available. Tips for safe essential oil use. You should always keep essential use out of reach of children. You don't want to use them with babies unless you understand the safety. If you're pregnant or lactating, you want to check with a professional. And as we had talked about, how you don't want to apply them to your skin, and you don't want to use them if you have certain medical conditions without checking to make sure that the oils you're using are safe. And if you ever have an allergic reaction to an oil, you should seek professional advice. I often tell people that topical use is more complicated because we need to use math and we need to dilute and we need ratios, but you know, a 2 to 3% overall dilution is safe for overall body massage and daily use. And I tell people to rotate oils regularly. If you're going to use them, you need to use carrier oils like jojoba or avocado or almond oil. You might put them in a roller ball like this. When talking about aromatherapy, I often have people say, like, there is so much information out there, I don't know who to trust, or who am I supposed to believe? And so what I often tell them is just to, you know, look for somebody who seems unbiased. If they're telling you that they have a cure for you and they have oils that you can use all the time, and mostly their focus is on you using a lot of oils, chances are they aren't educated in a professional way, because most aromatherapists are truly going to encourage you to use as little oil as possible, not just because they're precious resources, but because that's safest. I don't think any doctor has ever started out a patient with the highest dose available, right? No matter what you're taking, you start out with a little bit. Does that work? Do you need to increase it? You know, if you have certain acute situations, you might need higher dilutions, but there's very few medical conditions that would ever require daily use of essential oils. So, you know, beware of people touting magical cures. Daily use is really something that should be reserved for extreme conditions, and, you know, in conjunction with a qualified medical practitioner. So just be aware. Actually all professional and qualified aromatherapists rely on the Essential Oil Safety Bible, and this profiles over 300 essential oil constituents. They list hazards, the cautions, contraindications based on scientific research and evidence, and it is often one of our first resources in making sure that anything we're going to use with a new client is safe. And they're actually constantly putting out new information, and the Tisserand Institute is one of those places that I recommend. that you can get safe information. So is AromaWeb. Actually is a great website for educational information, and that's unbiased as well, and they have lots of they offer safety warnings and cautions as well. And these are a little harder to see, but some other trusted aromatherapy resources: the Alliance of International Aromatherapists. My website is Grateful Aromatics, Essential Oil University, the Tisserand Institute, which I mentioned, Essential Oil Analysis Foundation. They often will post reports of adulterated oils. If there are a lot of adulterated oils out there. Basically, there isn't enough lavender sold in the world to account for all of the lavender oil that is sold, because it just isn't, so there's a lot of manufactured adulterants, fragrance, perfume, so it can be hard to know who to trust. So there is a large Facebook presence of aromatherapists. It's just where we all are, and there's a lot of different groups. One of the groups that I help to admin, it's a science-based group, and we publish reports of essential oils that have been adulterated. We have fundraising to test different companies, and it's really just a science-based group. That's Essential Oil Consumer Reports. If you want to join, it's one of the ones I recommend. We don't talk usage or anecdotes or anything like that. It's just pure science, research-based. It's unbiased. There's no brand recommendations. Sharing the Essential Oil Love is one that you can ask questions in, and it's great for that reason. There's a couple others on here you can see. And, sometimes people ask me, like, well, I don't really understand what you do. You don't sell essential oils, and I don't, so what do you do? Like, what is it that you do? I did not invest in an essential oil company. People ask me, what oils do I use? And, I think, like, it's almost like saying, like, to a fashion designer, like, well, what clothing store do you shop at? Like, I'm not just going to shop at one place. There are many different oil companies for different purposes, and I use a number of different ones. I don't promote a company. I study essential oils, and so I'm often not promoting their use. In fact, there's many times where, as a holistic aromatherapist, essential oils may not be what I think is recommended, and I would be happy to tell you that. I don't make any money off of selling essential oils. What I do is I work with people to either create their own aromatherapy plan. I teach classes on safe use. I hold workshops for people who want to create stress reduction, anxiety blends, mindfulness. I also teach classes for licensed massage therapists and body workers. You can get continuing ed credits for some of my classes in actually in almost every state but New York. And that's some of the reasons why you may want to seek out an aromatherapist versus somebody who just sells essential oils if you really have some concerns, and especially if you have any medical issues or and sometimes it's even a great place to start if you just want to start with oils but you don't know what do I need. Depending on who lives in your household and what kind of pets you have, if you have infants, your needs may be different, and you may not need an essential oil kit. So I tell people, like, just try out companies that can sell you samples. See how you like that. Try out different things. Don't buy a bunch of stuff, because chances are you won't use it and they'll go to waste. So ultimately, aromatherapists can really save you time and money, and hopefully a lot of wasted oils. I have a website. It is I'm constantly working on updating it, because that's one of the new things I'm learning how to do. Now that I'm an aromatherapist, I realize I also need to learn how to run a website, manage, market, do all those fun things. So I'm working at it, and I also am on Facebook and Instagram, and I think that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Do you guys have any questions for me?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What, you didn't mention any, a lot of times I see stores that sell the aromatherapy candles.
Oh, yeah.
Is that effective? Is it not up your alley?
So I think that they are lovely, and so essential oils can be flammable. So there is this issue with flammability and essential oils. And I'm not exactly sure how mixing the two always works. But the other reason is that sometimes the reason that I don't always love them is because in order to get the true scent that you need in the candle, it requires so much oil that it's almost a waste of the fragrance and oils that you need just for that purpose. So I'd rather just like diffuse like a couple drops of it. Yeah, exactly. But it's the same thing with, I know a lot of soap makers have the same issue with certain fragrances. It really requires a lot of essential oils to get that scent, and sometimes truly, you know, a natural fragrance may be a better option. So, you know, but I mean, I think, you know, people will like them and it's safe. You know, I'm really all for whatever works for you, as long as it's not going to hurt you or anyone else.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? Are we good? I'm step away?
Yes.
All right, good. I won't
So
roll
thank
the
you,
face.
Venessa.
All right,
Appreciate
good.
it. Yeah. So thank you. As you can see, Venessa has a lot of knowledge, and the 3 takeaways that I have from this evening is, number 1, you have to really know what you're doing, just like a pharmacologist would know what contraindications are with medications. I mean, that's how deep this can be. Another thing that my takeaway from this evening from her seminar is that, number 2, less is more, right? More is not necessarily more, and especially in the Western world that we live in, it's always like the more you have, the better. It's not always more. Like more adjustments is not always better, right? Sometimes less adjustments are better. It depends on what your body wants. So the third takeaway is you really need to be able to consult with someone that has no attachment to any particular product, and that's going to be neutral. And you need somebody that actually has resources that they can consult with, because this is like anything else. You know, this is a new world that we have, or this is actually an old world experience that brought into the new world. And when you try to match Western thinking of more is better to aromatherapy, which is thousands of years old, then you have to really be careful. And that's the reason why I invited Venessa here, and she's going to be one of our partners in our practice, because we can't do everything here. And we're going to talk about in a moment in terms of how to integrate all this. But she is going to be one of the people that we're going to be using to make sure that you can really consult with her. And that's how we can then use her in our practice. And the reason why we like to work with people like her is because they live and preach what they're doing here. You know, they're living what they're preaching. She's a patient here. Her children are here as well. They understand the whole holistic approach. And one of the most important things is basically doing things that are natural in order for you to be able to live through your life with and adapt to the physical, emotional, and chemical stresses without harming yourself, right? It's above all, do no harm. So definitely don't hesitate to consult with her. So thank you, Venessa, for doing this. We'll have you back again tomorrow. No, not tomorrow, not that soon. So those of you online, please type in your questions in the comments section so that we can answer those for you. Again, the most important thing that we need to always allude to is that the only reason why we even exist is to feed your nervous system, right? The brain needs 3 things. What are they? Remember from our other seminars? Oxygen. Can't live without it. What else? Stimulation and glucose. If you look at the research, the most important thing is stimulation. So essential oils are really amazing things, and they're a very important part. Otherwise, we wouldn't even have this seminar. But guess what? If you don't have a nervous system that's functioning optimally, imagine what misinterpretations could happen to your nervous system. Let's say the cranial nerve, the olfactory nerve is not working properly. What's going to happen? What misinterpretations could possibly go through your nervous system? You might not get the best benefit from essential oils if your nervous system, if you're subluxated. Keep that in mind, right? There's so many things. Think about this. You could be taking a drug that would work a particular way because that's the way they research it. But if you have a subluxated nervous system, whoever studied that? You know, how do you relate to the environment when you're subluxated? That's the most important thing. Because again, ideally, if your nervous system is balanced, you have 100% function. However, when you have subluxation, the messages from the brain to the nervous system get garbled, right? Imagine again, let's say Venessa's coming home tonight. She's coming home a little bit late because she's, you know, serving the community by sharing this information. So let's say her son goes, "Hey, Mom, we're out of eggs." and I need some eggs for breakfast tomorrow. And Venessa, if everything's communicating properly and the messages are coming through, she'll bring home eggs. There'll be harmony in the home. The kid would be fed tomorrow, and he'll do really great in school, right? However, if there was a glitch because it's raining out there right now, and the messages got garbled on her phone because she had it on speakerphone and she heard bread, when really what's necessary are eggs, the son's not going to be, Mom, we have plenty of bread. What are you bringing bread home for? We need eggs. Do you understand? So the analogy I'm making is that it's not necessarily what's out here and what's here. It's the messages have to be what? Congruent. And that's really, really critical, that you need the nervous system to be able to interpret everything to you, from the environment. And it's very critical to do that. Because ideally, if everything's functioning properly, you have what? Optimal health and function. However, when you have misalignments or subluxation or stress in your nervous system, what happens? Your nerves become interfered with. Then what? The body's malfunctioning, right? I mean, there are people with anosmia. What does that mean? They can't smell. So it's going to affect the way they absorb things. So if your body's not functioning properly, I just balanced somebody's cranial nerves today, and they've never done that before. We look at the eyesight, the hearing, the smiling, the tongue, the swallowing, shrugging the shoulders, cranial nerve number 11. So if you don't balance those systems, it's almost like not getting the good. You know what? Anybody here ever get like a bad Wi-Fi signal? How's your web experience now? There's nothing wrong with the website. There's nothing wrong with your phone. It's the messages that are getting through. Do you understand? It's very critical to really understand that. And you guys are here. I'm preaching to the choir, obviously, because you get it. Because through your nervous system is how you interpret the world. And if you don't have proper functioning, you end up losing your health. And guess what? You have all kinds of problems here. And then you don't then get to experience life at 100% because you're misinterpreting things now. That means, and how dangerous is misinterpretation? Oh yeah, essential oils. This essential oil is supposed to be good for this. It's going to cure this. Like, really? How do you know? That may work for this person, maybe not that person, because they may hate that, right? And maybe do you understand? It's very complex, and that's why we need experts like Venessa to be able to help us, because not everybody can be expert in everything. You can have good intentions, but it doesn't mean you're an expert, and you can put people in danger. And that was really one of the main reasons why we did the seminar this evening, what not to do. That's going to be our title for the next one. What not to do, how not to use essential oils, right? As opposed to what to do, because everybody's telling you what to do. It's always a heavy burden to me that, we only have a few people in our practice here, because most people don't know the truth about health that they need to know. You understand? So that's why we post this online. My hope is that even one person can be hearing this and their lives could be better, or they could be saved, they could have hope because of the information that we just shared this evening. Because our practice mission statement is we're here to provide you with the best technology and holistic health and life care, right? It's not just about holistic health, it's about your life, correct? You could be really healthy, but if your life's not good, that doesn't really matter, right? It's about life and health in combination. So how do we want to do this? We want to inspire all of us, the people that we touch, to live what kind of life? Just kind of getting by? A thriving life. Life is so short, and so am I. But so it's really important to be sure that, just got that 10 years later back in the farm. You want to live a thriving life so that you could be a beacon of hope for others. Can you imagine if all of us aspired to really wanting to light everybody's candle? You understand? Just not aromatherapy candles, because the Venessa said that doesn't always work. So it's okay. Yeah, exactly right. Does that make sense? So our next seminar is how to avoid cancer and heart disease holistically. Again, cancer, heart disease, those are very big topics. That's number one. Number two, killers in society. We want to be sure that we have the proper information, how you can live your life in such a way that you can actually not have to be worried about those things, but have a strategy on how to develop that. Again, those of you online, type your questions in the comments section. If you found value in Venessa, I know I found much value and took a lot of notes in my brain. And if you been inspired by this in any way, please comment and like this so we can then share this and connect with you. If you have friends and family members that could benefit from what Venessa just shared with you, please share this information with them. And again, many people struggle out there. They're looking for natural things that are not going to hurt them or harm them. And I think the information you got tonight was more millions of dollars, I think, in terms of your life. And if you yourself are having challenges with your health, connect with our community. It's not about you becoming a patient in our practice. We're here to inspire you to connect with people of like minds, to have shared values, so this way you can be inspired to work with each other. Those of you online, subscribe to us. We're on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram as well, and our website, drmariano.com. And again, the most important thing is you got to connect with Venessa. She has a lot of resources, and she's a very kind person, so don't try to take advantage of her. So, because I'm watching over her. She's a good person. She has a good heart. She really wants to make a difference in this world. So please go ahead and communicate with her. Closing thoughts. So thank you, first of all, for everybody for being here, and hope you drive safely this evening. And I just want to close with a poem from, who's this guy? I guess it's Walt Whitman, I think, right? Okay, yeah, you can tell by the beard and the hat. So anyway, so this is the true joy in life, the being used for a purpose, recognized by yourself as a mighty one. The being, a force of nature, instead of a feverish, selfish, little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and as long as I live, it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die, for the smarter, not hard, he said harder, but I believe that smarter I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It is a sort of splendid torch which I've got a hold of for the moment, and I want it to burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. Our goal in our practice is always passing on that candle to inspire everybody, to inspire those people that you touch lives, because you never know what somebody's going through. In today's world with physical, emotional, and chemical stress, it's really critical that we watch out for each other, be each other's keeper. So thank you again for being here with us this evening. I want to thank all of you for participating, and we'll see you again in the next video. I'm Dr. Dennis Mariano. Have a good night and be safe. Take care.